They said witches were burned. It is a comforting lie, repeated to soften the truth. Many were taken long before the flames ever touched them, dragged from beds at night, bound in iron, marched beneath torches that hissed in the rain. Our story begins with a scream swallowed by darkness, and a woman whose name history refused to keep. What happened to her, and thousands like her, was far worse than burning. Before we continue, remember to like, subscribe, and stay with us through this haunting journey into humanity's darkest rituals of fear, superstition, and state-sanctioned brutality. Dampere clung to the stone walls as the accused was lowered into the magistrate's chamber, a place where truth was not found but forced. The smell of rusted chains mixed with sweat, straw, and the cold breath of torch smoke crawling toward the ceiling. She was not asked questions, she was shown tools. Iron pincers, the strappado rope, and the boot crusher glinted like the teeth of some ancient beast. Here, pain testified louder than innocence, and silence was taken as proof of guilt. Her agony became the court's evidence before the first word escaped her trembling lips. If the body survived the first interrogations, the next ordeal awaited, drowning without dying. The accused was tied to a wooden board, tilted just enough to keep breath possible but terror unavoidable. Buckets of icy water were poured over her face until consciousness frayed into panic. When she gasped, it was said the devil was leaving her; if she didn't, they claimed he held her tongue. Nails were sometimes driven beneath her fingernails to loosen demonic spirits. These agonies were not punishments but procedures, rituals meant to extract confessions no human could endure unbroken. Beyond the chamber, the world itself had turned hostile. Entire towns trembled beneath sermons warning of witches walking among them. Priests declared that misfortune, failed harvests, sick children, storms, accidents, were the works of hidden women whispering curses in the dark. Fear swelled into an instrument of power, and authorities exploited it ruthlessly. The machinery of accusation spun endlessly. Once named, a woman's fate was sealed, because guilt was predetermined by the hysteria gripping courts, churches, and families. Ordinary people became informants, hunting their neighbors to protect themselves from being the next name whispered into suspicion. As the witch hunt spread across Europe and beyond, they became less trials than ceremonies of paranoia. Chroniclers described entire villages emptied of women. Families erased daughters to preserve reputations. Even after executions, their names were struck from parish records, leaving a legacy built on silence. Centuries later, historians still struggle to count the dead. But legends remain, echoes of confessions torn from screaming mouths, and of justice twisted beyond recognition. These stories remind us how societies can weaponize fear, turning ordinary people into executioners and the vulnerable into symbols of imagined evil. In many regions, death did not come quickly. The iron chair, heated beneath the accused until the metal glowed ember red, was among the most feared punishments. The body, strapped tight against burning steel, convulsed in agony as skin fused to iron. Officials claimed that demons fled through flesh as it blistered, and thus purification required the slow torture of fire without mercy. Some victims died screaming. Others survived long enough for their charred bodies to be paraded through the streets as proof that justice had been done. The chair was meant to cleanse, but it only scarred humanity. Where fire was deemed too merciful, the breaking wheel awaited. The accused was stretched onto wooden spokes, limbs exposed like branches to the wind. Executioners swung heavy iron bars, shattering bones one by one while crowds gathered in hollow silence. Sometimes the wheel was hoisted upright, displaying the shattered form to the village as a warning. The pain was unimaginable, death could take hours, even days. Courts believed this slow destruction revealed the witches' true alliances. In truth, it revealed only mankind's boundless cruelty, hiding beneath the veneer of divine justice. Before execution, evidence was often required, and witch prickers supplied it with terrifying precision. Using thin needles, they searched the body for numb patches believed to be marks left by demons. If the victim did not scream when pierced, often due to shock, infection, or exhaustion, it was declared proof of guilt. Some professional prickers used retractable blades that left no wound, ensuring every examination ended with a conviction. Men were paid per witch discovered, turning suffering into a lucrative trade. Innocence had no place in a system where tools, not truth, wrote the final judgment. Some executions were not physical but psychological. Accused witches were locked in hanging cages suspended above town squares, exposed to cold rain, burning sun, and mocking crowds. Birds pecked at their skin. Sleep was impossible. Hunger gnawed until hallucinations blurred reality. Days or weeks later, bodies collapsed into stillness, their bones rattling inside rusted bars. Townsfolk insisted this slow death allowed devils time to abandon the body. But witnesses wrote that the only demons present were those in human hearts, condemning neighbors to madness while calling it righteous cleansing. Contrary to myth, drowning was far more common than burning. The accused were bound hand and foot and thrown into rivers or pits. If they floated, they were witches; if they sank, they were innocent, but often dead before rescue was attempted. The logic was devastatingly cruel: survival meant execution by torture, and death meant vindication too late to matter. Water, once a symbol of life and rebirth, became an instrument of terror. Witnesses wrote of families wailing on riverbanks as mothers and daughters vanished beneath dark currents, their fate decided by a few bubbles on the surface. In regions where burning remained ritual, many victims were strangled first, a mercy disguised as control. A rope tightened around the neck as pyres crackled beneath trembling feet. The crowd watched the body slump before flames consumed it, believing they had spared her suffering. But the terror before death was immense: the smell of pitch, the roar of fire, the heat licking her skin as breath fled. Even in mercy, cruelty lingered. These rituals reinforced authority, reminding everyone that the church and state held power not just over life, but over the manner of one's death. Hysteria spared no one. Children, barely old enough to speak, were accused of witchcraft and interrogated through threats or isolation. Parents were forced to testify against their own or risk sharing their fate. Some families were executed together, others were shattered when one confession led to another. Historians believe thousands of orphans were left wandering cold streets, branded by association. These tragedies reveal how witch hunts became less about sorcery and more about social collapse, where rumor replaced evidence, and communities tore themselves apart in desperate attempts to escape imaginary shadows. Not all who carried out sentences believed in witchcraft. Some executioners wrote in journals that they feared divine punishment for killing innocent souls. Yet they performed their grim duties, bound by law, fear, or poverty. Their hands trembled as they tied knots, lit pyres, or swung blades. In rare accounts, executioners begged victims for forgiveness moments before death. These confessions show the painful contradiction of the era: even those enforcing the system sensed its injustice, but felt powerless to resist. Their stories remind us that cruelty often thrives through obedience, not conviction. On the eve of execution, many victims were left alone with a single candle flickering against damp stone walls. Some prayed. Others whispered to absent children. A few wrote trembling notes insisting on innocence, hoping future generations might hear the truth. Guards reported moments of eerie calm, as though resignation offered brief peace. Outside, pyres were stacked, ropes prepared, wheels reinforced. Each small sound echoed like a final farewell. The night before death reveals something profoundly human: in their darkest hours, the accused clung not to anger but to fragile traces of dignity. When the flames died, or the rivers calmed, or the cages fell silent, communities gathered the remains, sometimes ash, sometimes shattered bone, sometimes nothing at all. These fragments were often buried without names, erased deliberately from memory. Yet their stories echo across centuries, reminding us how fear can warp justice into something monstrous. The tragedy of the witch hunts is not only in the brutality of execution, but in how easily ordinary people believed cruelty was necessary. As we close this chapter, remember to like, subscribe, and join me in the next video as we continue uncovering humanity's forgotten ghosts.